Hey, I am here to share my general favorites for the month of July. So, the biggest event I got to go to in July was called Untamed Daughters. It was hosted by Girl Swirl and Changing Tides Foundation. So, I've hung out with Girl Swirl since I want to say February. They are an all girls skate group in Venice Beach. They are all ages, all levels, and are inclusive to anyone who associates themselves as a female. Changing Tides Foundation is based in San Diego. Their focus is to address social, environmental, health, and safety issues. All of the proceeds from that day went towards Changing Tides' community outreach program, as well as Girls World Skate Mentorship Program. I'll link more information down below. So when I say that this is an all-day event, it was literally an all-day event. We started off the day with a beach cleanup, and then following that was skateboard lessons, surf lessons, a yoga session, and an after party. I think that CTF and Girls Swirl did such a great job collaborating and making this event come to life. It felt like a very inclusive and like a very friendly environment. And you could tell that they spent a lot of time like prepping for this to happen. They also got really great sponsors too. And all of the girls ended up with like swag that I think was up to $400. So for instance, we got all these goodies: this tumbler from Mizu, shoes from Rothy's, supplements from Sun Potion. I just call it like Gwyneth Paltrow powder. And then a bunch of more things from local companies. They also supplied food for both breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we started off with like acai bowls from Sao Acai in Culver. Our lunch was amazing. It was my first time trying Butcher's Daughter, and it was just so filling. I never get that full off of vegetarian food. And then for the after party, it was just like a bunch of pizza, like a lot. Aside from knowing that I spent a day being active and helping out the community, I just really enjoyed getting to know all the women that decided to participate in the event. It was just cool meeting more people from San Diego that I now still keep in touch with, and just to bond more with the girl swirlers from the Tuesday events. So another female skateboard group in LA is called Display Only, led by Brianna King. So like Girl Swirl, it is all ages, all levels, and anyone associated as a female. Usually she hosts at the El Sereno Skate Park, but I've noticed that she's been doing a lot of tours around Seattle, Chicago, and New York as well. So I've only got to go to her sessions once, but all of my other friends who are a part of Girl Swirl have gone. They've already like reinforced what I've already knew, that it is such a great diverse crowd. I've noticed that it is really more like diverse in like POC. If you're ever in LA, definitely check out Girl Swirl and Display Only. They are ran by females who ensure that the environment is non-competitive, that everyone feels included, and you are treated like family. Okay, so usually I avoid horror films, but my friend convinced me to watch Midsummer, and I am glad she did. It's disturbing, but I'm glad she did. So I think the reason why I was always put off by horror films was because it just seems like in the early 2000s, it was all kind of like cheesy, and it was just like violent for the sake of being violent. I like Midsummer because there is a theme behind it. If there is any gore, which is really graphic, it's intentional. But most of all, I like that how realistic it is. You know, it's not a supernatural horror film. If anything comes off as like supernatural, it's because it is portraying people on psychedelics. This can happen anywhere. That's like I think that's the most terrifying part about it. And another thing that helps make the film feel really relatable is that there are drops of humor in it. It kind of lets your guard down, and then all of a sudden you're like, So another film that I was super excited to see was called The Farewell with Awkwafina. So to give you a little hiccup of the storyline, Aquafina plays Billy. Her grandmother, who lives all the way in China, is diagnosed with a terminal illness. And so when she and her family visits her grandmother, all the relatives are telling her that she cannot tell her grandmother that she's sick. In the States, that would be considered unethical and illegal. But in China, I think that there are family values that are accommodating to why that is not illegal. And when you watch the movie, I think that it gives you, first of all, it's really funny. It's kind of also like psychologically educational because it forces you to understand an outside perspective. Whether or not you agree with the film, the ending is pretty appropriate for anyone who has opposing thoughts. I am a huge fan of Big Little Lies. I got to finish season 2 back in July, and I personally thought that the writers did a great job spinning off of the original novel, which is mostly what season 1 was based off of. So in season 2, there's a new antagonist. Her name is Mary Louise, played by Meryl Streep, and she's a salty bitch. It's convincing. I genuinely hated her. I think Meryl did an amazing job portraying her. So I felt like the most thought-provoking thing about season 1 and season 2 was comparing the character arcs of Bonnie, who's played by Zoe Kravitz, and Perry, played by Alexander Skarsgård. I find Bonnie and Perry very interesting because they are characters that actually never have interacted with each other, even in season 1, but you see towards the end that they are actually deeply connected. And not only are they connected because of the lie itself, they are connected because they are put on pedestals by their spouses, and they have the same childhood upbringing. And it's interesting to see how their emotional trauma manifests in each other and how they've kind of evolved to being really different people. I'm just going to leave it as that because I don't want to spoil it too much, but I think that if you are about to watch Big Little Lies, that's something you can look out for. And if you've already watched it, I think it's kind of good to go back and kind of reflect on that because it can create a really big discussion. I really loved watching the final season of Orange is the New Black. I think when it comes to really hyped shows like Orange, a lot of them kind of lose their momentum, especially in the last season, Game of Thrones. That not only did it maintain the dark humor that it always had, but for that every character arc is different. Aya, who is one of the main characters, to see her transition to what she is in the final season, I think that it's such a stark difference between season 1 versus season 7. But looking at what she's been through throughout her time in prison, it makes sense. And there are some people who had like really shitty outcomes, yet they never let it like stop them. So for instance, Tasty's storyline, I mean, it's terrible that she has like a even longer prison sentence because she was convicted of something that she didn't even do. But towards the end, like, it could have gone either way for her, but it didn't, and she made the best of it. It is kind of sad to know that there are some of the characters that you know and love that are now isolated and they didn't have the outcomes that they deserve. But it's important to have those types of storylines because it keeps people grounded and down to earth and realize that these things happen, and that, you know, and it kind of sparks people to like create change, especially the way that businesses are ran, but also just to be thankful with how like our lives turned out. Because I think when you go out of prison, you're never completely free. You see the probation process, you see how emotionally taxing it is and how hard it is to maintain like a sustainable job, to have like a regular life like your typical friends, to get over your PTSD. So everything everything ended for the right reasons. The only thing that is questionable to me is Pornstash's ending, but that's the only one where I felt like, okay, this feels a bit unresolved and I feel very wary about this. But overall, I think that the final season of Orange, it was their best season. For music, I've always loved Haim. I got to see them play at the Greek Theater around 2 years ago, and then they just came out with a new single called Summer Girl. So Raveena is another female artist I like. One of my favorite songs from her is If Only. The why I like Raveena so much is because like her R&B music I think is like equivalent to Erykah Badu or even Lauryn Hill in my opinion. I love her music videos too. I think like they're so sweet and they're so sexy and beautiful. Rex Orange County is also someone that I don't get tired of listening to. I know that he played certain shows in around like LA and Orange County. I'm kind of bummed that I haven't seen him yet, but he's like the one I plan on seeing. Like, I feel like Spotify, in a way, it knows me better than I do, because if it wasn't for it, I don't know if I would be exposed to any of these other songs. Some songs I really like is, one is called Lauren from Men I Trust. I love listening to Sango. Chlorine is one of my favorite songs from him. Now, if I were to think of good music to like dance to with someone or make out with someone, I would probably listen to Leisure. My favorite songs from Leisure are All Over You and Nobody featuring GoldLink. And speaking of GoldLink, I think currently one of my favorite songs from him is Her Side Story. Finally, I have been listening to a lot of Thundercat. I was over at a friend's house, and like when I heard it on her radio, I like geeked out because we're like, it's because of Spotify. One of my favorite songs from Thundercat is Them Changes. So those are my general favorites for the month of July. I like making these videos because in a way it's like therapeutic. It's nice to reflect back on your past month and see what kind of brought joy to your life. And hopefully whatever you do, whether it's journaling or even talking to friends, you can reflect on things and realize it's like the small, simple pleasures that add up. And those are the things that really matter, like, you know, despite everything else. So yeah, thanks for watching.